The most insane playthrough of Resident Evil 4 just happened. Someone installed enough mods to turn the game into Dark Souls, literally, and then managed to beat the entire game. I don't think what I've said is quite sinking in yet. When I say Dark Souls, I mean it. They added in a dodge roll, they made the enemies stronger, they played on professional, so they had 0 checkpoints, and most importantly, they tackled every challenge with just a knife and some grenades. You might be asking, how did someone manage to do it? And just who the hell is this guy? I can answer that second question right now. You're watching his video. The person who managed to accomplish this feat is me. I've been getting like a little cracked at this game, I'm not gonna lie. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my personal experience playing the game this way and how you can give it a spin yourself. I promise you, this may be some of the most fun you'll ever have with Resident Evil 4 Remake. I hope you all enjoy. Rainan, I'm still confused. What exactly do you mean by Dark Souls? I took Resident Evil 4 Remake and basically created an entire new Souls game with it. And I did this with the help of mods and some self-imposed rules. The outcome was a playthrough that was practically magic. It was a run that defied everything I understood about how the game worked. I made the crazy decision to never use the handgun unless necessary, which meant my primary fighting style was knife combat. And for all of my carnage, I had a choice of 3 knives. But as you can see here, I got the fighting knife, I got the combat knife. There's the combat knife, the primal knife, and the fighting knife. What if I told you that these 3 knives are exactly like many of the weapons you find in a Souls game? You have the combat knife, which has very fast animations, but does smaller damage. I use this in situations where I needed the extra wiggle room to defend myself. The faster animations gave me more opportunity to roll and parry out of danger. The fighting knife is similar to a heavier build in Dark Souls. Your swings do massive damage, but you're left vulnerable for a long time with each one, which left me being very deliberate with all of my swings. When I had the fighting knife, I found myself tanking through damage but mowing down enemies quickly. The primal knife turned out to be the middle ground. This knife served me well as my backup for when one of my 2 other knives broke. Thanks to these 3 knives, I had a character build system on my hands, and I could mold Leon into whatever I needed at the moment, just like a Souls-like. The melee combat in Resident Evil 4 Remake is much deeper than I expected. Leon has a variety of ways he can swing his knife based on context-sensitive actions performed by the player. But like, there's a lot of like nuance with the melee mechanics that I'm kind of discovering as I do this playthrough. If you aim with a knife, you can perform a lunging thrust for additional range, and you can get the enemy to stagger a bit if you successfully land a blow on the head. If you swing without aiming, you can get a slice attack that can combo infinitely. I like to use this between all of my lunges. And if I attack while running, I get a very fast forward swipe attack that does moderate damage and stagger. This is how I would start many of my one-on-one fights. And finally, you get an instant stealth kill by sneaking up behind an enemy. However, RE4R stealth system is very forgiving. You can sprint up to an enemy from behind, and if you're fast enough, you can still execute this instant kill. You can actually do this at any time, even outside of stealth, so long as the enemy is bound to the floor or the wall, or you manage to get behind them. These 4 attacks are so much more nuanced and useful than I originally thought they were. The nice thing about RE4R is every time I attack with a knife, I'm also technically performing a parry, which enables me to use the other melee options in the game. Because I played on professional, I had to land perfect parries consistently, and I was rewarded with opportunities to kick my enemies. This system is also very nuanced. The move that Leon performs is based on both his position and the position of his enemy. And you can even use these melee kicks to combo an enemy into a wall and then slit their throat while they're sliding down. It's a Tekken tier combo. That's just the vanilla game though. I had a wild card added in through mods. I have a mod called Dodge Roll and Sprint by the Alpha Z Omega, one of the biggest legends of the RE engine modding scene. This mod has a mechanic that allows me to perform a Dark Souls style roll in any direction at any time, and it comes complete with frames of invincibility. I cannot get hurt during the first half of this roll. The awesome thing about this mod though is that it has a bullet time feature where the entire game slows down if I can manage to perfectly time this roll, allowing me to use whatever knife or melee attack I want. That's all well and good, Rainan, but you said you made the enemies harder harder, right? That's where another one of Alpha Z Omega's mods come in. It's called Relentless Enemies. All of the Ganados in RE4R take turns fighting you one-on-one in order to keep the game fair. But Relentless Enemies not only turns that feature off, it has an option to make them attack off screen too. I had this option turned on, and it meant that I needed to have extremely good awareness of my surroundings. There was many a time I got an unarmed grab from completely out of nowhere. You may have noticed by now that I have health bars above all of the enemies. This is thanks to the aptly named Health Bars mod. Very appropriate. These health bars perfectly emulate the kind you see in a Souls game, and it made every fight feel fresh and unique. There's one enemy in particular that these health bars and the melee combat completely transformed. Meet Dr. Salvador. In the normal game, you can kite him around the map and shoot at him as you run. But remember, I've forbidden myself from using a handgun, and Dr. Salvador has a chainsaw. It's a very unfair fight. It was when I fought Dr. Salvador one-on-one that I fell in love with this mod setup. These mods turned a standard encounter into a boss fight, and I couldn't even begin to describe the rush I felt during the fight that you just saw. As amazing as that was, you might be wondering, Raynon, what about the actual bosses though? That's where everything gets even more interesting. I was walking up to the Mendez boss battle so certain I would need to use the handgun, especially during the second phase where Mendez hangs off the top of the barn. I had the Red 9 primed in my inventory just in case, but before I whipped it out, I said, fuck it. Let's see if it's possible. Ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, it took me 2 attempts to defeat Mendez in this way. I didn't even consider that it would be possible to beat him with just a knife, but that's exactly what happened. This was a recurring thing in the run. I would regularly run into boss fights expecting to not be able to beat them without the handgun, then walk out shocked that all I needed was the knife. For some fights like the El Gigante duo in the mines, I had to get a little bit creative. I can take out the unarmed Gigante just fine by stabbing at his feet, but the armored one gave me trouble. Normally what you need to do is shoot the TNT that Luis hooks onto his back to stun it, then drown it in lava. However, you can't do that without a handgun, right? Oh wait, maybe if I like throw it precisely enough. Oh my god! I was flabbergasted I could even do this. This was just something I randomly tried and it worked. This speaks volumes about why I love RE4R so much. It has a lot of what's called emergent gameplay. I can find so many different ways to express myself just in how I play the game. And the benefit of this is I can use the existing game design to solve any problems that I come across. There's an answer for everything, and this applies to even the final boss. Yeah, if I roll in anticipation of that, like if I can read that. Oh, fuck. I don't have more healings, too. Gotta be really on top of it when he bashes his feet like that. What? What? First attempt? I beat Sadler on my first try, just poking his fat little thorax. But get a load of this, if you have grenades, you don't even need the handgun for the second phase either. Guys, it might be possible. It might be possible. Holy shit. If he had enough grenades. So I take that back. There's 0 parts of this game you need the handgun for. Oh, wait. Oh, my God. Okay. Never mind. Never mind. I guess you guys saw it in person. You don't need the handgun for like the entire game. That is the entire game, completely possible without a handgun. The only content I couldn't do was side content, like the Golden Knight in the castle. But you can beat the entire game this way. While you can beat the whole game without the handgun, there's one section where I unfortunately couldn't. And it wasn't the game's fault. It was mine. When I was fighting Ramon Salazar, I unfortunately came ill-equipped. I didn't have enough grenades, and I couldn't stab Ramon because he never got close enough. I'm sad to say that for this one encounter, I needed to use the Forbidden Red 9. But Raynon, you just said you could beat this game without the handgun. Now you're telling me you need the handgun for Salazar? No, because Salazar doesn't invalidate my point about the handgun being optional. You see, Salazar is allergic to eggs. Fun fact, if you throw a golden egg at Ramon, it takes 70% of his health away, even on professional. And the game gives you 2 of these eggs, which means in theory, had I collected both of these, I could have beaten him fair and square, no gun required. But that's the problem. I didn't have these eggs. I made the mistake of sacrificing the second one to complete a request for the merchant. And unfortunately, I had to eat all of the other eggs in the game in order to heal myself. Massive bummer, I know. So that begs the question, who is the hardest enemy I fought during this playthrough? If this mod turns regular enemies into boss fights and bosses into puzzles, what was the worst to fight? Sadly, everyone, there is one enemy in this game that was a regular pain in my ass throughout this whole playthrough. These guys, the twisty motherfuckers. I hated these guys during this run because they were easily the least fun fights in the whole game. And they become more and more common as you progress. You just can't get close to these guys. And they always find some bullshit way to hit you. With a handgun, they're no problem. But I didn't want to use the handgun, so I had to use the lamest option ever, throwing a flashbang. Flashbangs will instantly take these guys out. But where's the fun in that? If you were wondering, yeah, these guys are the worst out of everybody. All of that being said, while I make everything sound so easy and perfect, I have to be blunt and tell you that it's actually not. This run was hard. Very hard. I reset the game a lot, and some of my resets weren't even from dying. There's this presentation from... I might have to just spam grenades at him and hope to get him in his mouth or something. Oh. Behind the bars like that other dude. No! Fuck! Damn it! Damn it! And because I was playing on professional, I got 0 checkpoints to work with. It didn't happen often, but the game sometimes crashed right before I got to the next typewriter. Might also be because I'm high. A tiny bit. Whoa! Okay. This is a great run to take on if you want a challenge, but I cannot stress this enough. This run is brutal. And that brings us to the next question. Raynon, how do I play this myself? Hold tight, because this next section is just for you. Now, I'm going to cover the rest of the mods I used to make this possible. First of all, I want to give a humongous ups to the Leon Samurai outfit mod. It's easily one of the best modded outfits I've seen for this game. This mod is purely cosmetic though, so if you don't dig it, no worries. You know, I couldn't get enough of Leon's supple nipple right there. There's another mod called Dynamic Weapon Profiles that I used to give my knives extra durability. And that was it. But in theory, if you wanted to do a version of this run with guns, you could play around with the stats for every weapon to make them a little more fair. There was a mod I technically used called Kick Open Doors, made by the one and only Alpha Z Omega. Once again, this mod I found very limited use for though, I'll be honest with you. Enemies aren't really behind doors all that often. It does have a checkbox that allows you to do a melee kick at any time though. Granted, it's super overpowered, but hey, if you don't mind OP, there's that, and it definitely has a place in a more vanilla kind of playstyle. I also used a mod called iframes by the same creator as the weapon profiles mod, one Mr. Booby Buyer. However, I couldn't even tell if this mod was working or not. I don't know if it was the version of the game or if I set it up wrong, but I felt like I wasn't getting iframes in situations where I should have gotten them. I'll still leave it though, because it might work for you. I could just be dumb, because I usually am. And of course, there's the 3 other mods I mentioned earlier. There's relentless enemies, dodge roll and sprint, and health bars. All of those will be down in the description. And of course, all of these mods interface with Prey Dog's RE framework, which is also linked. Another optional mod, just like the Leon Samurai, is Reshade. I used a reshade in my footage to make the game look more sharp and colorful. If you want that, it's called Natural Clarity Reshade, and it's in the description below. And that's all of the mods. Craziest part, guys, you could make this so much harder if you wanted to. I just saw a mod uploaded the other day where you can fight Verdugo as you go through the castle. Or you could be like everyone else and play it with some big titty mods. I mean, fuck it. There's this Ada Wong Rider mod. I swear it's made for me. It's red and black, see? You know your boy Rainin Noodles can't resist downloading some goth bitches. Rainin, what if I want to watch your playthrough? I'm flattered you think I'm that charming. Well, I have a playlist on my channel that you can find below, and you can watch me wreck Ganados for hours on end, assuming I'm not too busy answering stream chat. It's hard for me to play and talk at the same time. Which, by the way, I stream all sorts of Capcom games. I'm a Capcom YouTuber, and I've also recently started streaming some horror games. It's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. PST. Maybe check me out. But most importantly, everyone, that's the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, maybe consider becoming one of my followees. What's a followee? It's like a groupie following a rock star, except there's no drugs and no sex. It's more fun than it sounds. But you can become a followee by helping out Jill Valentine with taking out that subscribe button. She'll tell you when I make more Resident Evil videos. If you're not convinced, here's the best videos I've ever made. But most importantly, I hope you all have a good one. Peace.